Hello, friends, and welcome back to Discover Christian Mysticism with John Adams. I'm John Adams. I got an email a couple weeks ago from a friend of ours named Ray, and she writes, "Hi, John. I trust all is well. I have a question regarding asceticism. This evening, when I prepared dinner, I consciously chose foods that are healthy for the body, for God's body. But I also chose foods that I find tasty, and I started to wonder if that was being selfish. So I am perplexed, because we are to die to the self. But can we relax and give thanks for the foods that God gives us? I think I know the answer, but can you please give some input? This question pertains to most daily choices. Peace and love, Ray." So asceticism is voluntary self-denial in the search of spiritual enlightenment. And at the heart of Christianity, there's some tension between the sacrifice that Christ calls us to make for him, for each other, for the world, and receiving the good blessings of God that he offers to us in gratitude. And asceticism is one of those areas where Christians and spiritually minded and mystically minded people of all faiths have consistently gone wrong, because once you start down a path of asceticism, it's a real short jump to go to the extreme. So I'm going to answer Ray's question, and we're going to talk about asceticism in a series of 3 videos. In this video, we're going to talk about the heart and what the heart desires and detaching from material things. In the next video, we'll talk about asceticism in Christian mystical history throughout the ages. And in the last video, we'll talk about asceticism, self-denial, and that one area where Christians consistently get it wrong: our bodies and our relationship to sex. This material that I'm going to share with you is something that I wrote last year in the hopes of having it published. I didn't get the publication offer that I was hoping for, and so I decided to just share it directly with you right here. This chapter is called "The Stars You Steal," and it's about the relationship between our desires and asceticism and the spiritually enlightened life that we're called to live. I hope you enjoy it. "Sauces and condiments," writes Nilos the ascetic, "are the siege engines that batter against virtue. When a man grows more materialistic, he starts by desiring jam to put on his bread. Next comes a desire for the most expensive wines, then fancier and fancier clothes. Soon he's buying gold and silver dishes to feed his animals and even to use as chamber pots. I laugh and close my book of ancient wisdom. 'What?' says my wife. 'A monk who died about 1600 years ago just said something funny,' I say. 'What was it?' she asks. 'That condiments are soldiers of Satan, and that wanting jam to put on your bread will eventually lead you to wanting a solid gold toilet.' We have a good laugh at the expense of holy old Nilos. 'Who is that guy who had a solid gold toilet?' my wife asks. 'The President of the United States,' I say. She doesn't believe me. I search the web and find out that I and millions of others have been fooled. Now my wife is laughing at me. There was an art exhibit called America with a solid gold toilet at the Guggenheim Museum,' I say to redeem myself. 'Over 100,000 people used it.' 'Gross,' she says, 'but someone famous had a gold toilet in their house.' 'I think MC Hammer had one,' I say. 'Yeah,' she says. 'Stop. It's hammer time.' We dance. Badly. 'Why would someone even want a solid gold toilet?' she asks. 'I have no idea,' I say, 'but watch out, because it all starts with jam on your bread.' We laugh again. I go to the kitchen to make my standard breakfast: 2 scrambled eggs with hot sauce, a piece of toast with jam, an apple, and a cup of tea. As I dash hot sauce on my eggs and spread jam on my toast, I cannot stop thinking about solid gold toilets, and not ironic ones like the exhibit at the Guggenheim. Jam makes bread tastier, but there is no way that sitting on a toilet made of gold enhances the experience of using the bathroom in any way. Why would a successful person buy something as silly as a golden toilet? Why is luxury clothing so popular when all clothing is made in the same sweatshops and covers the same body parts? Why are there jewelers for dogs and over 500,000 homeless people nationwide? I stare at the strawberry jam on my knife in horror. Holy old Nilos had gotten to me after all. What is wrong with us? We know the heart as the organ that pumps the blood throughout the body. Ancient people also understood the function of the heart, but since they saw blood as the substance of life, they also symbolically understood the heart as the center of life itself. The metaphorical spiritual heart is our innermost essence, the fountain from which the rest of our life flows. The guiding star of our hearts, and thus the guiding star of our entire lives, is what the heart desires. Of course, no one's heart really desires a solid gold toilet. A golden toilet is not superior to a ceramic toilet, and the same is true for most luxury goods. But we don't buy golden toilets or expensive clothes because they function better. They are meant to tell other people something about our personal value. A man with a golden toilet in his house is a man who wants you to know that he is richer and therefore more important than you. What we really want is respect from other people, to know that we matter. The cheapest way to do that is to own the expensive material things that we think other people want. Our desire is not for the things themselves. We want to own things that force other people to validate a specific vision of who we think we are. We tend to desire what our neighbor has or what our neighbor desires, writes philosopher René Girard. And if individuals are naturally inclined to desire what their neighbors possess, or to desire what their neighbors even simply desire, this means that rivalry exists at the very heart of human social relations. The problem with desire is not that we have desires. The problem with desire is that we consistently misuse our hearts to desire trivial or ludicrous or harmful things that cannot guide our souls into resonance with God. We cannot see beyond the limitations of petty competition with our neighbors. We can't see through the advertisements to understand that one more useless luxury product will not satisfy that ache in our souls. We let other people tell us what we should desire, and our desires end up too small or too selfish to resonate with what Spirit wants to do in us. The result is a neighborhood, a town, a state, a country full of citizens who are envious of each other and ashamed of ourselves. Out of the heart comes everything that defiles you, says Jesus. Evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, lies, and slander. Besides competitive desire, untransformed hearts are vulnerable to exaggerated natural desires that lead us well beyond our basic needs into behavior that is destructive. The natural need for sex and intimacy can become an inflamed desire for all sorts of strange sexual encounters, the next always riskier than the last. The natural desire for bodily health can become the inflamed desire for bodily perfection, which can result in eating disorders or depression. The natural desire to escape from pain can lead to addiction. The natural desire to have your voice heard can become the inflamed desire to dominate everyone around you. The natural desire to be loved and accepted can become the inflamed desire to possess and control your loved ones, leading to a mess of horribly dysfunctional relationships. The natural desire to be safe can become the inflamed obsession to control the chaotic world through force. But the soul, writes Julian of Norwich, never finds rest in things that are beneath itself. Whenever our desires become inflamed or exaggerated, we are at risk of fulfilling them in unnatural ways, eating rocks, jumping from temples, or worshiping the devil and his power of violence. That's a reference to the temptations of Jesus, which is something I mentioned earlier in this material. Whenever our desires are less than what they should be, we end up miserable, competing with each other for things that do not really exist. But there is a conspiracy of guidance counselors and aptitude tests and advertisers and family members that is hell-bent on getting you to settle for desires that are less than what you really are. I will be complete, thinks the child, when I get the toy that all the other children have. The thrill of the new toy lasts for weeks at the most. The other kids move on to something else. The soul despairs. I will be complete, thinks the college graduate, when I get a good job with a retirement plan so that my mother will be proud of me. Mother is proud and regular paychecks are nice, but cubicle walls soon become a prison cell. The soul revolts. I will be complete, thinks the single person, when I find a spouse and start a family. When the whirlwind of romance and marriage and pregnancies and early parenthood finally clears, 5 people of varying heights sit around the breakfast table and look at each other. The oldest child tries to bear the burden of his parents' existential happiness. Father tries to bear the burden of his wife's existential happiness. Mother tries to bear everyone's burdens. No human being is equipped to carry such an unfair cross as the complete happiness of someone else, so all 5 souls feel the tension of deep dissatisfaction because they each know that they are not enough to fulfill the desires of the people they love most. I will be complete, thinks the boring adult, reverting to childhood once the kids are gone, when I can buy the house and the car and the clothes and the vacation and the impotence medication that are advertised to me. Alone in the front yard of a colonial-style palace, someplace where it does not get too cold in the winter, in a long line of other suburban palaces, each with a freshly waxed car and a winterized boat and an unused RV arranged in the driveway, a gray-haired man in khaki pants looks back on his life and wonders about missed opportunities. He did everything right. He got what he wanted, but his anemic soul is lonely and uneasy and sad. The most important thing about us, the thing that determines how our lives flow and move and grow, is what we desire to become. It is crucial that our vision for ourselves is big enough, meaningful enough, beautiful enough to actually recover the divine image in ourselves. If you arrive at the end of your personal rainbow and find a solid gold toilet waiting for you, but you still feel the ache of a soul that longs to become something real, something authentic, where do you go to find that? No university can teach it to you. No advertiser can sell it to you. You can't earn it or eat it or order it online. The star that guides your heart into who you really are is a star that you cannot buy or steal or inherit from a well-meaning parent. You have to find it in you. We need a star to follow that hangs above the treacherous waves, that does not wander, that is fixed to its place in the sky. We need a vision for ourselves that can transcend the job market, the tides of fame and fortune, the shifting winds of the love and approval of others, the personal shipwrecks and heartbreaks that we all suffer. Choosing a star is no job for the spiritual power of our minds. Our minds want practical details, cost-benefit analyses, known categories, titles, certainty, a plan. But if our vision for ourselves is going to be as transcendent as it needs to be, we can't start with those things. We have to start with creativity, with wild longing, with the spiritual ache of our hearts. I long to be a fellow worker with the holy in the continued unfolding of creation's life, whispers heart. That's more like it, says the God in whose image we are made. I long to be a midwife for the birth of new truth into the universe. Now we're talking, says Jesus. I long to be a conduit of the divine for the healing of humanity's soul. That's why we're here, says Spirit. I long to be a vessel formed of the earth herself, shaped and tuned to resonate with the song of the cosmos. Birds sing, flowers bloom, and the ground beneath purrs with contentment. To become our true selves, we need to know who we are on a deeper level than our minds. Our hearts have to lead us past reason, across the frontiers of safety and certainty, into exciting and terrifying possibility. But once we know who we are, and more importantly, where we are going, we can ask our mind to help us wrap a body around our spiritual desires. Maybe we start families. Maybe we plant gardens. Maybe we try new prayer practices. Maybe we get our passports and start saving for plane tickets. Maybe we learn to paint or sing or dance or play instruments or write jokes. Maybe we keep our office jobs while we go to trade school at night to become welders or diesel technicians. Maybe we fall in love. Yes, all of those things look a lot like things that other people do. And yes, there are plenty of miserable people who do all of those things. But with your heart in the lead, and your mind working out the details, you are free to approach life differently, to happily explore any outward form, to see what best expresses the Spirit of God within you. What you do, what you own, or the opinion of your family and friends can no longer disappoint you once you stop trying to follow them as counterfeit guiding stars. Life, and all that comes with it, becomes open, mysterious, dangerous, and fun when you take responsibility for your own course through this world, and when you set your heart's desire on what is truly best. Resonance with all that is holy beyond you and in you. Resonance with all that is leading you to become who you are meant to be. If a man desires something, writes Maximus, he makes every effort to attain it. But of all things that are good and desirable, the divine is incomparably the best and the most desirable. How hard we must fight to obtain what is good and desirable by its very nature. The purified desire that leads our souls to God and to the recovery of the divine image in ourselves, that desire does not come easily. Our hearts have work to do. We have to examine every desire and compare it to our spiritual vision for ourselves. We have to be ruthlessly honest about our motives and fight every selfish impulse. We have to reject the desires that are imposed upon us by guidance counselors and advertisers and parents every day. The most important and the most difficult part of training the heart is to know clearly who Spirit is calling you to be. Spirit usually speaks in soft whispers, in riddles and feelings, and it's much more difficult to listen inwardly and to know your heart than it is to buy a product because you saw it on a billboard. To hear the quiet voice of Spirit, we often have to train ourselves to silence the loud and colorful voices all around that demand our attention, our money, our compliance. To focus on what is truly worth desiring, we often have to deprive ourselves of what is not worthy of the devotion of our hearts. For what the flesh desires, writes Paul, is opposed to Spirit, and what Spirit desires is opposed to the flesh. If you want to do what Spirit wants, you can't let your heart get distracted by everything your flesh wants to do from moment to moment. You have to live by the Spirit. To live by Spirit takes courage. It is certainly the road less traveled, and there are no assurances of safety or financial security or respectability along the way. The God of the Bible is the God who calls people over and over again to leave their homes, their families, their jobs, their religions, and their nations to seek a truer embodiment of Spirit. The people who accept the challenge face incredible hardship. They suffer poverty, persecution, ill health, failure, and death. But the big surprise is that overall, the people who long for God and who actually let their hearts lead them seem to be the people who find deeper meaning, deeper purpose, and deeper joy than the people they leave behind. And from Abraham to Moses, from David to Jesus, from the disciples to the old desert mystics, these people usually seem to think that the trade-off is worth it in the end. Don't worry about your life, says Jesus. What you will eat or drink or what you will wear. Life is so much more than these things. Most people spend their whole lives striving for them, and of course God knows what you need to live. But seek first the kingdom of God and the way of living that resonates with it, and along the way you will find all the things that you need as well. So learn to listen to Spirit's whispers. Find a vision for yourself that is beautiful and holy and authentic, that transcends a job or a title or the opinion of a crowd or your possessions. Set your heart's desire on enlightenment, on recovering the divine image in yourself, however that looks for you. Set out in fear and trust into the unknown and follow that star wherever it takes you. Let Spirit lead your heart to the desire that is worthy of the God in you, and let your heart lead your soul into who you were created to be. That is what it means to love the Lord with your heart. We'll get into some of the particulars in the next video, but what I want us to understand right now is that self-denial for self-denial's sake is not what we're doing as spiritual Christians. Denying ourselves and stripping away all that is false so that we can find the true desires of our hearts, the desires that God has given us. When it comes to knowing Him and who we were created to be, that's the purpose of asceticism, and that's the purpose of self-denial. And the job of the mystic is to strip away everything that distracts us from that guiding star. You can email me at john@withjohnadams.com. That's John with no H at withjohnadams.com. And we'll see you next time until Christ is formed in us.